Welcome to Hangout from Times Ascent. My name is Sujit John, and I've been a journalist with the Times of India for 25 years. I will moderate this discussion today. We will be discussing a topic that's particularly relevant to youngsters: how to crack a job interview. Can't overemphasize the importance of this, considering how competitive the corporate world today is. But as Jonas, one of our panelists today, told us in an earlier discussion, thousands apply for a position and few among them are called for an interview. So if you have been called, you have already won one battle. Still, many are also called for interviews. And even if you have attended multiple interviews and know some tricks of what and how to say, some of the tricks get old quickly. So how can you brand and sell yourself well? To discuss this, we have with us today 4 highly accomplished professionals. We have with us Namita Sinha. Namita is a seasoned banker who turned into an independent coach and mentor with an aim to help people achieve their true potential. She's also a sales and soft skills trainer, a POSH enabler, prevention of sexual harassment, and a leadership coach. She loves her assignments as a writer, blogger, columnist, and poet. She's an ICF accredited life coach and certified career strategist. Welcome, Namita.
Thank you, Sujit. Thank you.
We have it as Ritu Raina. Ritu is Chief Human Resource Officer at Quick Heal Technologies. Quick Heal is an IT security solutions company. Ritu has held various HR leadership roles previously with the Vedanta Group, Sterlite, with Amdocs, HDFC Bank, Godrej, and Tata AIG. In her 2 decades of experience in HR, she has led large HR transformations. Ritu is a CXO level coach and a keen researcher, and she's a winner of the Women's Super Achiever Award. Welcome, Ritu.
Thank you.
We have it as Subramani B. Subramani is a virtual trainer and facilitator at Forpal Consulting. Forpal is an HR solutions firm that Subramani founded. Mani is a passionate entrepreneur involved in executive search, virtual training and facilitation, interview skilling, resume transformation, and business consulting. He has over 22 years of experience across the banking and financial services domain in business and leadership roles and in HR consulting and executive search. Welcome, Mani.
Hi.
And we have it as Jonas Prasanna. Jonas is a person you cannot see, I think, on the screen, but he's there. There's a problem with his laptop, and therefore the video is not visible. Jonas is the international HR business partner for Boeing. Jonas is passionate about building people and fostering culture in a digital world. He's an alumnus of IIM Kozhikode. He has over a decade of experience in HR, and he has performed various roles as HR business partner, employer brand manager, learning and talent advisor across companies and startups in aerospace, consumer electronics, lighting, and information technology. He was ranked among the top 20 HR influencers on social media by SHRM India. Welcome, Jonas. Those who are viewing this, you can send in questions in the questions section of this webinar application. My first question to all of you, how should an interviewee prepare for an interview? I presume what recruiters look for varies, but I guess there are commonalities too. So how should one prepare oneself before the interview? Who wants to start? Can I ask Namita to start?
Yeah, thank you so much, Sujit. And that's a very relevant question. I think, yes, the more well prepared somebody is, your chances are definitely improved with respect to your desired outcome. I would say preparation for the interview is about before the interview as much as during the interview and what you do post the interview. So it's not only about focusing on things which you can do before the interview, but do keep in mind during the interview as much as post-interview stages are equally important. But the best thing we can focus on is what lies in our control at any point of time. As you rightly said, that a lot of things in the mind of recruiters, we can't figure out every time. But as far as our preparation is concerned as an interviewee, if I talk about interviewee's point of view, then the most important thing is at least know yourself really well. Because the person that you are going to present there, the abilities, the skills, the competencies of the candidate is all about you. So I would suggest the most important thing with experience also I've seen, everyone should at least spend some time writing down about their own unique skills, their experience, their talents, their abilities, know about yourself, practice well how you can talk about it with examples, maybe with situations, get it clearly across to the interviewer what you stand for, what you bring to the table. But again, this will happen only if you can also link it really well with what the job role is all about. So therefore, now comes the second point of researching well the job role itself. What is it that you are actually looking forward to? Again, research the company, the organization, the culture. The more well prepared we are with our own values as much as what is expected from the job role and from the company's overall background, the better we will be with our own confidence. So preparation starts at this level. Secondly, we are all pretty aware that communication these days is more about body language. So make sure that you come across as somebody who has a lot of energy, enthusiasm, you are engaged in the conversation. So these are few things which can be really well prepared. Rest, of course, during the interview, there are a lot of questions which you need to practice also. I feel the mindset game, the point of getting your nerves in place starts with these things as to know yourself well, your abilities, your unique value with respect to that role, and know about the company. They would expect that you at least are serious enough to have some idea. So that's where it starts. Maybe others can add on. Yeah.
Okay. Ritu?
I think, Sujit, we as candidates, we have our own script about ourselves. And job has also its own script about the job. In the preparation, matching the scripts becomes really very important. When I say matching the scripts, because if I am called for an interview, I need to really look, what was the job description? What are the key skills which are matching with that? So I would say highlighting those points becomes really, really very important. That is number one. Number two, I think is important is to be a storyteller. First, see the matching of the script. Then carve out your story, which is actually highlighting those points which are there in the script of the job. Third, I would say is the strong presence of the mind. And be present in the interview. Don't be lost in your own self. And I think when I say you may tell me that it's required when the interview is happening, but I think being present requires a mental preparation, which includes calming your mind, taking out all fears, and just kind of telling a script to your head that they need me as much as I need them. So I think that is what is required. And on the top of it, what is important is, I would say, be authentic. Because when you are in the room, if you don't know anything, say I don't know, because people will still select you if you're authentic, but they will not select you if you fumble, if you try to create something. So this is what I would say that is very, very important for the job interview.
Okay, multiple interesting points, but let me ask Mani and Jonas also to pitch in here. Mani, anything you want to add to this?
Sure, thanks so much. So taking from where Namita and Ritu spoke about, see, there are two fundamental things which I feel a candidate needs to prepare on. One is the resume itself. And this is something which I've seen from my 22 years experience. People think resume is different from an interview. They are very closely interrelated. What you're putting in resume comes out in your interview very clearly. So the thing which I tell people is a simple test. Read out everything on your resume and ask yourself, so what? If I have written something, how does it lead to? What does it lead to? What is it going to interest the interviewer? So that's one part of it, preparing on the resume itself. And the second is preparing you for the interview, like Ritu talked about in terms of conditioning yourself, mentally preparing. So two things which come out very clearly is, what do you want to tell about yourself? I think that is the only thing which is in your control, really. Interviewer is going to ask what they want, what they expect from you. But can you at least be clear about what do you do? What do you want to tell about yourself? What are your strengths? What work do you do? How do you connect those dots with what you are doing and what they want? So I think these are the two critical areas of preparation, the resume and the personal side.
Jonas?
Yeah, thanks, Sujit. Thanks for the opportunity. I would say a couple of reflections based on interviews that I've done and my personal interviews. One, candidates have a script. There are standard questions that they prepare for. And what you as a candidate should realize is the interviewer doesn't know your script. So even if you make a mistake, the interviewer doesn't know you made a mistake. So that's the number one thing that people get flustered during an interview, where you think that the interviewer knows that you have made a mistake and you get flustered and you can't remember, etc. So that is number one. The second thing, and just to connect to the point that our earlier panelists talked about, is storytelling. People remember stories, people remember unique instances of where and what you have gone through, and that's what stays at the end of a discussion. So if your story is memorable, the chances are you're likely to get hired. Over to you, Sujit.
Okay, storytelling. Can one of you give an example? I mean, what do you want that person, the interviewee, to say? How do you tell a good story?
I think it's more about relating an experience, Sujit. When we say story, we are not really talking about narrating a fable, right? But what we are talking about is telling an experience which brings out what you do and what your strengths have been. So, for example, if let's say you're applying for a HR role and you want to project yourself as someone as a people's person, someone who can resolve conflicts, it would be good if you talk about an experience as to how you brought people together on a table and you solved that issue and how it was a win-win for everyone. Narrating that brings out that quality automatically, and it stays.
Ritu, you also talking about storytelling.
Yeah. So, Sujit, I think, story has a character, it has a data, and it has a situation. If I answer an interviewer only based on data, without a situation and character, high chances the person will lose interest in me. But as Mani mentioned, I am telling him the same people management skills I have, but I am giving the scenarios. I am talking about a situation, and there is some personalization as well. My boss, this happening that way. So when you bring that element of character and the situation, the retention happens, higher in the minds, rather than just talking about the data project and efficiency and productivity. How much ever we say we are left-brained, in the heart of us, all of us are right-brained. We love to hear stories. Yes, data stays with us, but stories connect with us faster.
Okay. Jonas, you want to add to that? You also mentioned storytelling.
Yes. So, one additional point to Richa's, a story should also have a plot twist. So what challenge did you overcome? What did you, do that was above and beyond the normal course of work, and where you could become the star or the hero or the villain in that case. So I would just add the plot twist as an additional element to your story to better build your case.
Okay, and all of you mentioned that this being authentic. I guess half the time we're trying to second guess the interviewer, what that person kind of expects and all that, and we try to probably behave in a way that we think they want. But you're saying, Namita, you are saying don't. I mean, you be yourself. You would discourage anybody trying to do anything other than being that person.
Yeah, absolutely. Because, as we all know, once you start faking it, or once you start trying to build a story or an impression which is not exactly about yourself, you will land into trouble, because whatever you say is going to give rise to the next question, possibly. The conversation is not altogether, practiced. Things will come out the way what you have said will lead to the next question. So if you are talking about genuine stuff, what you actually stand for, you can really support it very well, because you are not faking things, or you are just trying to figure out the other person. However, the way we know that it's difficult to support a lie, that's one thing. Secondly, you are there to anyways convey your value. I mean, let's understand the purpose of the interview is expressing and communicating really well about your own value. Why are you a fit for that role? At the same time, you are also trying to understand from the questions what the company really wants. You also have opportunity to actually, make a final decision whether I want to join this company or no. So it's a very authentic conversation, authentic exchange going on. I don't think there's any place for not being authentic here. So it's all about being genuine, and let's see whether it's, a good match for both the parties. So that's why I feel, yeah, authentic is paramount. Yeah.
Okay. Mani, in your experience, I mean, are there some common things that all recruiters typically look for? A few common things, interviewers.
See, I think, Sujit, every recruiter, irrespective of the domain or role, is primarily looking for three things. You know, what does a candidate know and how can he apply that knowledge to the work which I have for him? I mean, that's the fundamental question. So what if I am a candidate, the recruiter would want to know what is the extent of my knowledge and can I use that knowledge to apply? Because just having that knowledge and not being able to apply doesn't serve the purpose. So that's the fundamental question. The second is, how do I work with other people? Because am I someone who can work with people? Can I lead them? Am I going to be a good team player? Can I coordinate? Can I manage conflicts? Can I work across cultures, levels, all that? And the third is, what am I as a fundamental individual? What kind of values do I bring? What is my motivation to work? What is deep down, like the lower part of the iceberg? So I think these are the three questions which every recruiter or interviewer tries to probe on in various ways.
This team player, how do you assess whether a person is a team player or not? You can make out, is it?
See, it's more of the way you question. Most of the interviews now are, at least good recruiters don't ask you a plain question, are you a team player or not? It's typically a behavioral event interview or a competency-based interview where you try to assess and find out how they have behaved in such a situation in past. So it's not so easy to, get your way through if you've not really done that. And if there has been some challenges, they will come out. So, I mean, there's no yes or no answer to this question.
Okay.
And I think, Sujit, I just want to add what Mani has said. So though we may not even ask the question about team player directly, but over a period of time, the language what he is using, the way he is depicting answers to various questions, which might be a problem solving question, whatever, gives enough, I would say, indication that does he see himself as an individual or a part of a group which is trying to solve the problem. So many times this question may not be even the direct question. But I think after you become an experienced interviewer, after 15, 20 minutes and 2-3 answers, you can make it out what kind of personality he is. He's individual centric or he's more of a collaborator.
Okay. But generally, does everybody want a team player? I found sometimes, I mean, there are these individual people who are very talented, but not great team players. What do you think of people like that?
So I think in the IT industry specifically, I have seen, because past 1 decade I have been here in the IT, there are specific hardcore technical roles. And by nature, these people are like, they love machines, they don't like people. It's like as simple as that. So they have such hardcore technical skills and hardcore technology understanding. You may become them in high IC roles because you're very clear how you have defined the boundary of the roles. Accepting those exceptions, I think for every role, people interface is very, very important, because at the end of the day, organization doesn't win by one individual, it wins together as a team.
Jonas,
if I can just add on to Richard's point. Yeah, so I would just say a couple of things. It depends on, I would use the lens of when you are entering the organization. Are you, just entering into an organization, or are you a fairly experienced person? If you are a fairly experienced person, your job entitles you to manifest and really help others around you try and achieve an organization's goals. So 1 + 1 is equal to 4. But as an individual contributor, when you're just entering into the company, you want to prove yourself. So I do believe an element of individuality is important. You need not be a team player over there because you're out to prove yourself. But as you grow and develop in the organization, you might want to look at how do you get people along to achieve greater goals.
Okay. I just wanted to ask about attire. I mean, there's actually already also a question from one of the viewers, David Abraham, asking how does the physical appearance affect the interview? And yes, same question from me as well. I mean, attire and all that. what should one? Does it depend on the company? Or also, the startups sometimes have a very casual culture. I don't know. Maybe when you're attending a startup interview, should you go in formals? What's your general advice?
So generally, I feel, Sujit, being safe is good. Unless you are really clear about what kind of culture the organization has, it's good to be neutral and be formally dressed. I mean, formally, I'm not talking about wearing a suit and a tie for a man, but I'm just saying being formal, wearing a nice clean shirt, not smelling. I think that would be good and well combed hair, groomed. That should be good enough. Unless you have been specifically told that a company expects you to dress up in a particular way, I think it's this attire should be good enough.
Okay, Namita, you were saying?
Yeah, I completely agree with what Subramani said, that it's one of those areas where we needn't take too much of a risk. And in fact, it really, gives a very good impression that you have been serious enough to consider your attire, your look. You valued the entire context. And therefore, I think it's safer to be neutral, rather one step higher than the kind of norm that you may have assumed. Otherwise, of course, if exceptionally you've been told by the recruiters that you need to be in a certain attire, it's a different thing. But from our end, I think it's always good to be one level higher than what you assume is the normal culture, and let them understand that you indeed are serious, professional. It makes a good impression. Yeah.
Okay.
But at the same time, Sujit, I have a word here. I mean, from my own experience, there have been times where the candidates have dressed up very well, and because of a circumstance, like I'll give you a specific example of a candidate who went for interview for wealth management, and she had to search for the interview place for quite some time in Mumbai heat, and by the time she reached, she was all sweaty and all, and she was rejected purely on that, which is I
Really?
feel at times I think I may this not may be the right forum, but I'm just sounding out the interviewers that I think they also need to be considerate on this at times.
Yeah, I know.
I think, I just want to add a different dimension here, Sujit, because your clothing and your dressing does talk about your personality, does talk about you as a person. So, the way you dress up, even if it's a formal, the color you choose, the kind of, attire you choose, it has a strong connection with you as a personality.
Right.
And when you enter, the interviewer is making a mental match. Can he be a fit here, or can he be a fit here? So I think that also becomes a very, very important point. So don't try to be what you are not in your dressing. When I say so, for example, if I am comfortable in Indian attire, but I want to show to the company that it's a multinational and I want to, wear the Western trouser, blazer and all that, I should not try be myself, because I can be very elegant in whatever I'm comfortable with, and try to be yourself in that as well, because what matters is, of course, the grooming part of it, the choice of the colors part of it, not, you want to look fashionable or not so multinational types. So I think that also becomes really, really very important.
Okay.
Yeah, it's an excellent point that Richa shared. Sujit, if I can just add one thing, it's just wearing formals is like a change in mindset. At least that's how I would look at it. When you are at home, you wear your clothes at home, so you get into that kind of mindset. When you're going out to party or anything, you're wearing a different type of thing. So it's a change in mindset. It just helps you to settle yourself in terms of, okay, you're prepared to go, your armor is on, and you're all set.
Okay.
No, Sujit, the underlying theme here, whether you're in the interview, what kind of attire is about how you're expressing yourself. So as Ritu rightly pointed out, everything you are doing is an expression. So you're not trying to impress someone, you're trying to express. I think that's the key you need to remember.
Again, be authentic. Okay. All of you mentioned values of the company. As an interviewee, values. How do I understand what the company's values are? You have to research it. Namita?
Well, yes, again, a very crucial thing. So, of course, one area which is easily accessible is the website, and the other things which companies themselves, highlight about what they stand for, their culture, their vision. Everything is normally given in their websites. But more than that, I would say that we should, as an interviewee, go one step ahead try to understand a little bit more. If possible, maybe you can talk to people who work there if you have some friends or somebody. Maybe network with some people. Read a little bit about what's happening in that industry overall, because every company belongs to a certain industry, which also reflects kind of ecosystem in which they operate, and that also reflects on their possible values. Also, these days, recruiters and HR managers themselves also share about their values and their broad, culture before the interview. Many a time they do brief the candidates about their organization. So do take very serious note of what you are shown by them also, maybe through their presentations or whatever. It's good to get as much information. You will at least know what you are going for. You have an understanding, and then you can identify your own values and see where there's a match. It gives you the opportunity to express it clearly that yes, I have certain values or certain experiences, certain abilities do have a match with what this role and this organization also stands for. So yeah, extremely important, and there are various sources from where one can figure out. But I feel a first-hand interaction with people who have worked or are working there can also help. One can network through so many means. Yeah.
Values, I mean, can you give some examples of the kind of values that companies in India particularly stand for, and the differences among some companies?
I think
So while
Sujit,
some
primary
play
question.
a lot of
Yeah, sorry, Namita, go on.
you can-
Okay, so what I was saying, Sujit, primarily for me, when I talk about value, it's difficult to know a lot because a lot of internal workings are not in public domain always. So while you can research a bit, I think the key thing for any prospective employee would be to know how the people are treated in that organization. So that's something which you can find out by talking to some people. There are things like Glassdoor where you get reviews. So those things might help. But I think that's the primary question, because everything else is pretty difficult to find out, to be honest. And I've not seen people being able to really dig deeper and know what kind of growth you might get, or how does a company operate, the ethical systems and processes. All that is not available, to be very frank. So the people thing is the only thing you can check for and see what kind of opportunities people get to grow. That's all I said.
And adding to what Mani said, for example, when the person goes for an interview to the organization, how does the decor of the organization, the lobby look like?
Yeah.
How are people walking across? Are they smiling at you? Did the company made you wait? For example, if humility and respect is a value, and I have been 45 minutes waiting for me to get in on my scheduled time, I get enough information, correct?
Yeah.
And even when I enter the room, how the interviewer is treating me, because at the end of the day, value is I would say, a combined behavior displayed by various people, which has been encouraged in that place. Automatically, your 80% would be displaying that. I think the interview process itself is subconscious way of assessing, am I a right fit in this company or not, right?
Okay. All of you also mentioned, communication ability. I mean, is there something that you can really prepare yourself? I know by the time you reach an interview, I guess you're already a certain kind of communicator. Is there something you can do before that to kind of ensure that you are a better, I mean, you communicate well during the course of the interview?
So I think, as Ritu said, you can't have a scripted interview, Sujit. What you can prepare for is what you really want to tell about yourself and your work. But all of it otherwise is more of the flow. And as long as you are well prepared about what you want to tell, I think you can go with the flow. The key problems come in when people have a scripted answer and they want to tell something. And if a follow-up question is asked, they don't know what to say. I think that's where the impression comes that this person doesn't know how to communicate. And I think many times candidates are a little apprehensive if they are not very fluent in a particular language, or if they have an accent. I think employers are pretty okay with that as of now, as long as the person is able to put their point across, properly. I think that shouldn't be a challenge. So I think these are the two areas I feel come into picture.
And I think what Namita about reflection. Reflection will play a very, very important role. For example, if I am reflective enough and I know I talk too fast, or I kind of mix up the words when I speak, I better prepare for this one. I calm down my mind. I say that I be conscious that I have to give a space between the lines, or other way around. If I'm too slow and I'm taking too many pauses, but all this will happen only if I have reflected enough on my person, because all of us have room for development. None of us is perfect, right? So having clarity about my areas of development and kind of doing a practice for that before you actually go can help, because over a period of time with practice you become fluent and better for sure.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
so just if I can just give an example
Yeah, Jonas.
of a value and link it to communication. So Big Basket, the way they hire people is from tier 2, tier 3 cities, because they need to have distribution, they need to have sales, they need to have supply chain and logistics. So they are very conscious about the fact that the candidate need not have fabulous communication skills or can articulate in the right way in English. Hello? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
So what I was saying is Big Basket hires from tier 2, tier 3 cities. And they don't put an emphasis on communication because they realize that the candidates that they have to hire are not necessarily with the grade who can articulate in English fluently. And that is also reflective in how they also promote people within the organization. Communication does not become a deal breaker. So if you look at their leadership team, the head of supply chain logistics is somebody from tier 2 who's actually grown within the company. He's fabulous in his job, but communication wise, he might not be what you typically expect from executives.
Okay, got it. Companies are conscious. That's a question I was wondering myself.
I'll just add on one point there. What I feel and what I've experienced through so many candidates is communication, of course, depending upon the role, there could be different levels of expectations. However, the common thread is one should at least be able to express themselves clearly, whatever line of thought you have in your mind, what you wanted to convey, that should come across clearly, right? I mean, you yourself know best what you wanted to say. At the end of the day, if you feel regretful that I was not able to convey myself clearly, that's the gap you need to prepare for. That's the gap you need to bridge. And very often, apart from, the verbal communication skills, that often happens because of the so-called nervousness or whatever you may like to call it, the question of slightly depleting confidence at that point of time. And that is precisely why one needs to practice on himself, as in their own background, plus the job description, the company, because the more familiar you are with things, your confidence automatically goes up and your thought also becomes more clearer. So that's the whole idea why preparation does help, because even though you get your out of syllabus questions, but because you've been practicing, you know a lot of things about yourself, you can fit something or the other and your nerves would be much better in control. So I think it's all about clear expression the way you wanted it. Of course, it should come across clear to the interviewer also, but at least your intention and their understanding should match. That's more important. Yeah.
Okay, research and practice. Yeah, lots of questions. Let me get to some of the questions. I know this has been mentioned before, but still, Ravi Singh is asking, how does body language make a difference? How does body language make a difference? Who wants to take that?
Huge. I think it's a lot. It's more than what you speak, because when you walk in, before you even open your mouth, I would say an experienced interviewer can gauge what kind of personality you are. So I think one has to really focus and practice and train over a period of time on the body language. Because, for example, if, you are interviewing me and I'm not having an eye contact with you, that is clearly showing that maybe I'm not being truthful or I'm not being confident enough. The way I close my hands or I press my fingers is giving an impression that she is trying to muster the courage. So I think one of the key important things for creating a positive body language is that it's a serious affair. but not that serious that you have to really kind of put a pressure on yourself. Try to have a conversation with a prepared mood. When you say conversation with a prepared mode, you actually ease out your body. In fact, for example, the way you cross your legs in front of the interviewer is also talking a lot about your personality. The way you get up and thank and leave the room. And I would say, in my experience, when I have been interviewing for many, many years now, those body languages have given me much everlasting impressions than the words they spoke. Sometimes someone walks in and I feel like there's something not right with him or her. And it's very so cognitive, I can't even express what it is not. But there is something. So I think focusing on creating a positive and inclusive body language is always, always very important. Don't try to show dominance or arrogance. And many times what happens is, as an interviewer, I feel, is his dominance and arrogance worth the talent he is bringing? And sometimes I feel, okay, he is slightly less on talent, but see the kind of attitude he has got. Maybe he will learn few things, which is a 10 or 5 difference, but I think I can live with that. So why I'm giving you this example, but this is the importance of the body language, irrespective of the technical or functional skills.
Should you offer your hand to shake and all that, or should you wait for the interviewer to kind of make the first move?
I think you can always take your hand out and shake. And I would say very interesting data point around this also. If you are interviewing me and I'm waiting for you to take out the hand and shake the hand, which means I'm looking for a command. Am I being proactive enough and being courteous enough to say, hello, Sujit, this is Ritu, and just trying to be warm and create a friendly environment. I think small gestures are being captured consciously and unconsciously.
Jonas,
just to add to what Ritu was talking, I guess there are two aspects to body language. One is something which comes naturally to you. There are a lot of kind of traits or gestures you make as it grows on you. Someone may you do like this, or someone may put a hand on the chin. Those are something which are natural to you. But there are a lot of language which your body speaks when you are in an interview, because that's additional pressure. So I think a good interviewer is able to segregate. They put the candidate at ease so that the language which has come because of the nervousness goes out of the picture. And then you see the actual. So I think candidates can be quite brave in that and feel that interviewers want to recruit them. They need not go with a fear that if they open their mouth, they will be caught and will be thrown out. So I think that fear, most of the interviews now are quite comfortable in relieving that pressure from the candidates and then move on. So I think it's
nice.
Yeah. Just to add, to the point that is shared, a piece of advice that I would give, Richa as well as Mani talked about one-on-one interviews. In a panel interview, there might be one person who speaks, who asks the question, and there are maybe 2 or other 3 people, or even bigger groups that are actually listening. So what tends to happen is that the interviewee, that is the candidate, tends to respond back to the person who speaks, who asked the question, while ignoring the remaining 3 people or 2 people. So it's just important to maintain that eye contact and also address the panel. Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. Okay. There's a very interesting question. Okay, Namita, you want to say something?
Yeah, you didn't finish. I'm so sorry. Please carry on.
No, Namita, you wanted to say something, or shall I go on to the next question?
Simply adding on to what Jonas said, about kind of answering back and responding well to all the panelists. I would suggest that one also takes care of all these things in the current scenario of more and more video interviews also, where your entire body language is not visible. But even, your talk one third or whatever portion is visible also impacts a lot. That is first thing, in terms of what all of you have highlighted, the eye contact, the smile, all those things. And one more thing which I feel sometimes goes ignored is the body language of your voice. Because now even telephonic interviews happen. So even you are not visible entirely, but things like your tone, your pitch, the pause you take, maybe you interrupt, maybe you do not interrupt. Are you coming out as somebody who, though not visible, is still present? So all these things, I would say the vocal body language, that also contributes a lot. And I think one should practice telephonic interviews without the visibility factor, just to understand how they're sounding. That's also very important. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, since you brought that up, virtual, since I know this is the point that we all wanted to discuss when we had a pre-discussion. Yeah, virtual interviews now, many of them are happening like that. Anything else that people should be aware of in virtual interviews? Mani?
I think they just need to be conscious that it's like any other interview, Sujit. That a lot of people feel that they are sitting away and only a part of them is visible. So I think there is a tendency to become slightly more casual. Also, I think especially I'm talking about freshers. If there are a lot of them listening to this, don't be too conscious about where you're looking initially. I mean, a lot of people forget about what they want to say when they think of, okay, I have to look into the camera and I have to, take care of this. Say what you want to say, other things will come. That's my advice to the freshers. But it'll be good if you can practice looking into the camera. It's not so easy when you're not looking at someone else and talking. But yeah, you can try. It's not so difficult as well. I mean, all of us can learn. So just be conscious that it's like any normal interview. You're sitting in front of people. The only the difference is it's digital and not physical. That's it.
Okay, okay.
Mani, I just want to share my experience, because when people think that they are taking interview through video or through call, they take it a little granted and laxed. And in this COVID, when I was taking interviews, I would sometimes feel candidates, even at I would say mid-level and a senior level, they would not switch on the video. So I used to get a hint that they are not really prepared. So initially I would say, if you don't mind, can we switch on the video? Because I was switching on, I was well prepared to have a conversation with him. And then, he says, oh, I never thought you will tell me to switch on the video. It's like, okay. So I think my decision making 70% has happened there only. I'm hardly listening. So I think taking interviews more laxed when it is remote or video conference should not be the case, because it is just a different mode. Rest you take it like any other normal interview.
Okay, okay.
Yeah. Just one piece of
yeah, sure, Jonas. Go on.
One piece of advice to the audience. A lot depends on your internet connection. So find a spot in your home where you have a strong internet connection. Because call drops will happen. If you don't have a strong internet connection, go to your friend's place. And take the call. That's very important. And if it does happen, you just move on, and these things are part and parcel.
Okay.
And also to add to what Jonas said, in case this happens, unfortunately, it will be a good idea to call back or to leave a message saying that this happened and you are available to continue the interview, because that gives an impression that you are serious about it and it's just something which you can't really control.
Right. Okay.
Adding on to that, these days many candidates are boasting of virtual backgrounds, of island and garden and sea beach and all that. So I mean, it's your choice, but just think about it. A background where you are sitting in a beach or something like that, and it's obviously not the right way. So even your background, at least to some level, it should be professional, or at least maybe a blank wall is the best way, whatever. But sitting in Hawaii or something is will not maybe,
Namita, I would say it's absolutely avoidable, unless you are in a small space where you expect people to walk behind you. I think it's absolutely avoidable.
Preferably a blank space background is what you're saying. Yeah. Okay. But if you want to show yourself to be cool and all that, what? No? Still.
I was also
I think it's about expressing versus impressing again.
Correct.
Okay. There's this question from Neha Sinha asking, companies, she's wondering how come companies are using face reading today during interviews? Is that the case? Are they using some technologies or something?
I am not aware
I haven't
of this.
come across so far.
No?
Not really.
Okay.
Can I just add on to that?
Yeah.
So I went through a very interesting interview experience, and this I'm speaking from my personal experience a few years ago, where the company had a preset of questions, and I had to look into the camera and answer. And after I finished answering the question, I had to go to the next question. So it was a very impersonal experience for me. Going through the video interview. And then when I actually got the face-to-face interview, I kind of asked them, why did you do that? And that was their way of going through a number of candidates just to see what people are saying, how they are responding to situations. Also have a level playing field in terms of the questions that were asked, so that they could compare. So that was an interesting experience for me.
Okay. Interesting. A couple of questions from Satish Komar. He's asking, networking and reference works a lot, more than you're being a good candidate, oftentimes, more than you're being a good candidate. How to deal with this?
I think a reference and network can take you to the interview, but can't get you selected.
Okay.
So that's where I would stop, probably.
Ritu, you wanted to say something?
No, I just wanted to kind of say that please don't shy away from networking, and don't think people who network, they are not really great and they're not doing good work. Trust me, in today's world, networking is an important part of your own professional development and career journey. Networking is not only to just get things fixed. I can network for knowledge. I can network for, maybe creating more partnerships in future. So I think one, irrespective of interview, I'm just going out of the question. It is important for all of us, whosoever is in the professional journey, to network. And it doesn't come very naturally to us as Indians, because we feel that we should really work very hard to get through the things in our life. And if you see maximum workforce, they are young engineers from tier 2 cities who get into the tier 1 cities. With the kind of backgrounds they come, it's like a script given on a book which they have to follow. But trust me, when you go to these big cities and the big corporates and you're trying to make your life and career, these cross connections, not only in interview, they help you always. So when you start your career, the way you keep, I would say, a space for your own skill or functional development, keep a space for networking as well. Again, don't overdo it, because anything which is done beyond becomes fake. Do it with the purpose. I need to have more knowledge about this industry. I need to understand and learn from these people. Eventually, that network can help you to get a reference. That is secondary. But I would say networking is not a bad thing. It's a good thing, and you should do it with a purpose and clarity.
And somewhere it also helps in showcasing what you bring to the table. Like Sujit, you recall when we were talking about that virtual facilitation, we were talking about how people create videos and tell what they know to others. That's a way of telling even before the interview that this is something you are aware of and you are doing it. So I guess, yeah, I agree with Ritu absolutely in that.
Okay. So LinkedIn and all, good place to kind of try and build some networks.
Absolutely. Again, Sujit, my advice to all students is, the people who are, watching this, is that everything has to be done in balance. Don't overdo anything. Yeah, because sometimes you overdo LinkedIn as well. That also can become, that can backfire. So again, it's boiling down to the authenticity. So do it, but do it in a way that, it's really adding meaning and value. Don't just do it for the sake of doing it.
Okay.
Yeah, if I just could add on using social media, especially for students, the number one source of helping you get a job is the alumni of your current school or college.
Okay.
And how do you get in touch with them? You can go through your alumni association, or you can connect up with them on LinkedIn. Because if they are in that company and they already have a commonality in terms of you going to the same school and having shared experiences, they will be your biggest supporter. So alumni whether they are in the company can be a good way of getting an inroad, into
Okay.
your first job.
And
The second thing is in terms of when you're doing an when you're doing an internship, again, build that connection so that in the future, if you have to apply for that company or any other company where you have built those relationships, you have that inroad.
Okay. There's a very specific question from Prakash CH for himself. I was working as faculty in mechanical engineering department from 2000 to July 2020. Please, can you suggest what I have to do now? For somebody who's that old, or experienced or whatever, and now looking to do something new. I know this is an interview session, but how does he go about?
I think he has to identify his own career anchors, because when you identify your anchor, you actually start realizing, and it is not a very big deal, because you can get into the market, or you can go to online and look for Edgar Sheen's tool on career anchors. When you do an assessment for yourself, it tells you what really drives your career, what is your motivation for your career. And for example, one of the anchors is about entrepreneurship or about creativity. If that is my anchor, and I have immense of functional knowledge because I have been teaching or as a faculty, he can be a great mentor to the startups, because they have young bunch of people who don't have a functional knowledge about some aspects of engineering, maybe. So I think first is clarity about what drives my career, what is my motivation for my career, and then identifying opportunities for those. And thankfully, we are in the times where opportunities are ample and in different forms and fashions. If I have to say 15 years back, you could have a corporate career, you could have a teaching career, and it is done and dusted. Now it's not the case. You have mentoring, you have startup cultures, you have different places where like-minded professionals get together and they are selling their own skills together as a group. There are ample opportunities available. But I think before getting into those opportunities, assessing your own career anchor, what drives you, and then doing an assessment of your capabilities, where do I stand if I have to really learn something new, and then looking for the opportunities. If you don't do step 1 and step 2 and directly jump to step 3, it can frustrate you, because you may get something which is not connected to you. You may get something which is connected to you, but you don't have the capability to do that. So I think he will have to do it in a 3-phased manner, and he can do it.
Okay.
It's like that Venn diagram we make for design thinking: desirability, feasibility, viability. I think that's what you have to look for. What do you really want? What is that you desire? And then you look what is feasible and then viable, and come to that crux of it.
Okay. Prakash CH wondering whether can you really measure a candidate within a couple of interviews? You are all recruiters, or experienced there. You think it's very much? Some companies have multiple rounds, 7, 8 rounds of interviews and all that, right? But it's possible. It depends on what. It depends on the kind of position you are hiring for and all that. A quick interview.
Sujit, there are multiple things. It's not only you are only interviewing. You are doing psychometric assessment. You are doing aptitude tests for the technical roles, and then you are calibrating scope between various interviewers. So then you put up all the data together, and final outcome comes.
Okay. Namita,
Yeah, I would first like to add on to the previous question, where we were reflecting on the person who is a faculty member and he was seeking our advice. So particularly in such situations where you're looking at such things like career transition, or you are kind of looking at opportunities different from what you are currently doing, something which is very important also from interview point of view is to understand what we call as your transferable skills. As in, you might have been doing a lot of things where there could be certain skills which can be transferred from whatever role you are currently doing to any future role, future industry. Like for example, problem solving skills, team management, or things like these. You could very well have a lot of examples to demonstrate these in your past roles, as much as how it can be connected to any other industry, any other role as well. So like Ritu said, first understand your career goals, understand your own strengths and all. At the same time, I would say also work a lot on understanding these kind of skills which can be linked to any other role, any other industry also. And then how can you really get it across even during an interview? That's very important. So we normally call it transferable skills, portable skills. That's what I was referring to.
Okay, okay. This
Yeah,
question from
I feel with you.
sorry. Yeah, Jonas.
So a quick thing on the gentleman who asked for the work. So I would just say that there are organizations, or there are there are freelancing websites like Fiverr, Upwork, these kind of companies, and these companies actually help you to freelance. And gig workers are the ones that are the highest in terms of growth in terms of employment. So you could look at freelancing opportunities, because those are skills that are transferable, and you can work on projects that you choose to work on.
Okay. I know we're almost towards the end of it. A quick question from Vipin Saini. He says some of the interviewers don't give time to the candidate to get comfortable. They rush through their questions. In that case, what should the candidate do? Don't take
Find your own way to be comfortable. And that's what I would say. If it's not interviewer's responsibility ideally to make you comfortable. I mean, though it's a joint process, but if it's not happening, find your own way to be comfortable. Just spend 5 minutes before interview getting into that zone, as you call it, and then just walk in. I think that would work better, and practice it. And don't think that you will be able to just get into that mode before the interview. If that's something you really want to do, keep practicing it. I think that will work. So simple things like someone has a habit of swiveling in the chairs. So how can you stop that? Practice that. How will you stop that? Or if you are jittery with your hands, find some place to keep your hands still, so that I mean, those small things you can work out. So don't depend on the interview for that. Work it out.
Okay. I mean, final few minutes. How to conclude an interview? I mean, what should you do as an interviewee when you're finally ending it? What should you say?
I would feel if you're given an opportunity to ask a question, ask something which really matters. Don't ask just for the sake of asking. A lot of people end up asking about working days, hours, and leave policy, which doesn't really make sense. You can always, check up those when you're offered. But ask something which matters in terms of, what kind of growth potential can you see for yourself, or how does a person who joins at your level, what kind of career prospects you can see. So something like that, which makes sense, would be good. If there is nothing which comes to your mind, it's absolutely fine to just thank and say, nothing comes to my mind at the moment. But if I have something, I'll want to come back. I mean, that's also good enough.
Okay. Namita, you're saying something?
And I think specific, as you rightly said, if you have some relevant question in your mind, go ahead. Asking questions is a good thing. But otherwise, the basics, what one can do, at least make sure that you do thank them for the opportunity. You do express your energy or enthusiasm at this point also. Making a proper eye contact with all panelists, that's also extremely important. So make a proper respectable exit. If you have the confidence to ask questions, fair enough. If you don't have something on your mind, it's fine. But it should be a proper closure from your end also. And it should convey that energy, that enthusiasm, that you look forward to the next step. I mean, that's it.
Okay, great. There are some other questions, but all those questions all of you have answered at different points. So I'm not going to make you repeat any of those. I think the answers are all there. So thanks a lot. Great discussion. I mean, exactly the sort of thing a lot of people, not just youngsters, everybody often wants this kind of advice on how one should. But like all of you said, research, practice, all of that is so crucial. Thanks a lot, Subramani, Ritu, Namita, Jonas. Wonderful discussion. Hope to have you again on this panel sometime. Thanks from Times Ascent.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Thanks, Ritu, Namita, Jonas. Bye-bye.